The Western Ghats, a network of waterfalls, ancient swamps, and jungles. At its heart, a mountain range created by cataclysmic volcanic forces millions of years ago. Powered by the Great Monsoon, the Ghats became a refuge for a diverse group of creatures. A nocturnal primate, a mutant termite-eating bear, a giant purple frog that has outlived the dinosaurs, and one of the strangest-looking birds in Asia, the Western Ghats, one of the great animal arks on Earth. The hills and mountains of the Western Ghats include some of India's wildest places. All sustained by the summer monsoon. Together, they provide refuge for India's iconic wildlife and a cast of bizarre mutants. The lowland hills are home to the largest number of Asian elephants in the world. Numerous monkeys inhabit the monsoon forest. And the world's biggest cat stalks the lush jungles. Ten 10% of the world's surviving tigers live in the Western Ghats. The mountainous Ghats create a forested corridor stretching the length of India's west coast down to Sri Lanka. This unique combination of geography and environment makes the Ghats an evolutionary crossroads. For millions of years, waves of animals migrating from the rest of Asia and Africa have moved down this spine. In the past, when sea levels were lower, many animals traveled right down to Sri Lanka, which at times was almost an extension of the Western Ghats. How ancient creatures came to live in the Ghats and the evolutionary adaptations that tie them to this place is the story of India itself. It's a story of massive geological upheavals, of repeated invasions, and of survivors from the deep past. All of it made possible by the life-giving waters of the monsoon. Water is especially important to one particular group of the Ghats inhabitants: amphibians. The Ghats are a hotspot for amphibians, and scientists keep discovering more. There are at least 138 different types of frog. Most of them time their breeding to coincide with the annual monsoon. At this time of year, the waterways are full of tadpoles, and competition for food is intense. But one mutant frog, the most bizarre of the recent discoveries, has found an ingenious way around that. Beneath this waterfall, something strange is moving. They are tadpoles clinging to the rock face, grazing on the algae. These tadpoles have evolved strong suckers that allow them to feed in the fast-flowing water where there is no competition from other tadpoles. Scientists first described these curious tadpoles almost 100 years ago. But until 2003, no one knew what these little mutants metamorphosed into, because the adults spend almost their entire lives deep below the earth, hunting termites, for which they have evolved the pointed snout common to many termite eaters. DNA evidence shows that the purple frog is a 130-million-year-old enigma, a survivor from the time of the dinosaurs. Where did this mutant come from? The answer takes us back to a time before the Western Ghats were born, when the ancestral purple frogs lived on an ancient southern supercontinent called Gondwana. India broke away from this supercontinent. Then it passed over a massive plume of hot magma. It unleashed a gargantuan lava flood that covered 1.5 million square kilometers. The lava buried most of southern India under a volcanic plateau that was up to 2,000 meters thick. Later, tectonic forces pushed up the western side of that plateau. The tilted up edge became the Western Ghats. Millions of years of monsoon rain eroded the Ghats into jagged peaks. And nourished the forests that sprang up to take advantage of the wet tropical conditions and rich volcanic soils. Each summer, the monsoon breathes new life into the Ghats. Many trees time their fruiting to coincide with the rains. For most animals, this is a time of plenty. For the elephants, however, the monsoon means it's time to move. This herd is leaving the Ghats. By migrating eastwards, they will avoid the plagues of biting insects that come with the monsoon. There, they'll feed on protein-rich young grasses. When the rainy season subsides and the grasses become too tough to digest, the elephants return to the Ghats. Tigers, on the other hand, must stay year-round to defend their territories. To thrive, they need prey, cover for hunting, and crucially, plenty of fresh drinking water. They're one of the very few cats that enjoy water. But when it's in the mood for hunting, this is the apex predator in the Ghats. The stripes break up its outline. The color is obvious to us, but most of its prey has poor color vision and cannot see orange. Deer are among its favorite prey. Tigers are perfectly adapted to life in these hills, but they didn't evolve here. In fact, mystery still shrouds their precise origins. No one is sure when India's most iconic predator first arrived. One problem is that these solitary hunters have very large territories. So tigers have always been few and far between. As a result, they have left behind a very poor fossil record. Dating their arrival in India is almost impossible. One estimate is that it was as recently as 12,000 years ago. It's likely that they used the forested corridor of the Ghats to spread deep into India. Although not strictly a rainforest, the Ghats receive as much rain in a year as the jungles of Southeast Asia. Up to 8 meters of annual rainfall sustains more than 5,000 plant species. Among the lush plant life are peculiar prehistoric swamps. These are myristica trees, relatives of the nutmeg. Their stilt roots are an adaptation that stops them from toppling over in the waterlogged soil. Like the purple frogs, they are ancient relics from Gondwana. Purple frogs have survived in large part by going undetected. They spend almost their entire lives up to 8 meters below the ground. The only thing these frogs have not evolved to do underground is breed. For just 2 weeks each year, males call from their burrows. And a female emerges to choose a mate who will fertilize her eggs. The frogs have timed their mating in perfect synchronization with the coming rains. Their slippery, round bodies and short, stout legs are well adapted to their underground lives. But it makes mating an ungainly affair. The male must climb on to the much larger female and hold on in an embrace called amplexus. They set off together to find a suitable nursery pool. It can be a treacherous journey. But they never let go. They must find a pool that will stay undisturbed long enough to allow the eggs to hatch before the monsoon rains wash the tadpoles into the main channel. Eggs laid, the frogs head back to the riverbanks. The hard, white ridges on their hind legs are an adaptation for digging backwards into the wet soil. No one will see a purple frog again for another year. The Ghats are not one environment, but a vast range of many different habitats and ecosystems. There are deciduous forests where the trees lose their leaves in the dry season. high grass-covered mountains, and dense evergreen jungles full of monkeys. These varied environments provide refuge for many ancient creatures. One of the first to arrive was a curious-looking mutant. The great Indian hornbill looks like a toucan gone horribly wrong. The growth on its beak is a casque. Its function is rather mysterious. The color comes from a gland that secretes a yellow oil. Although the casque looks cumbersome, it's hollow inside and weighs little. How and why did this bizarre helmet evolve? All the world's 54 hornbill species have some sort of casque. But in many, like this gray hornbill, it's flat and barely visible. Casques may originally have evolved in hornbills as structural supports for the long curved beaks, and slowly become big in the great hornbill through an evolutionary process called the handicap principle. Female great hornbills may actually have preferred males who had a mutation that enlarged their casques. After all, if they survived despite such a handicap, they must be strong and fit. They would have passed the mutation down to their offspring, and over thousands of generations, the casque would have become highly exaggerated to appeal to the females. And they have an excellent reason to be picky about their mates. It's mating season. Through a slit in the tree trunk, you can just make out an eye. It's a female hornbill. She has walled herself into a hollow tree with a cement made of her own feces. Inside this self-made prison, she's raising a single chick. For the next 11 weeks, she and her offspring are completely dependent on the male for food. The slit is not wide enough for predators to enter, or for her to get out. She's chosen well. He supplies her with plenty of protein-rich morsels. Then the energy-rich fruit course. He stored an incredible amount of it in his crop, which he now skillfully transfers. When she's finished her meal, the female clears the nest of unwanted leftovers. Only old trees have hollows large enough to use as nests. The mature forests of the Ghats are vital to the hornbill's survival. Intriguingly, scientific evidence shows that hornbills probably came to India before it joined up with Asia. Long ago, there were two supercontinents, Gondwana in the south and Laurasia in the north. When Gondwana broke up 165 million years ago, India journeyed north across the equator. By 50 million years ago, it was close enough to Laurasia for hornbills to reach it by flying. When the continents joined around 45 million years ago, it opened the way for an invasion of new land-based creatures. Among them was a bizarre nocturnal primate, the mysterious slender loris. The loris is proof that evolution doesn't lead to perfection. It leads to good enough. The loris is good enough to survive, but only just. Their close relatives are the fast-moving bush babies of Africa. As long as 30 million years ago, lorises may have specialized in hunting toxic insects to avoid competing with bush babies. Over time, the loris's metabolism slowed down to allow it to deal with the toxins. Now, the loris has little energy for anything. It spends almost half its time asleep, or sitting still, clasping tight to the branches. Clinging on for dear life is something lorises are good at from the moment they are born. But the sustained grasping restricts blood flow and oxygen supply to its muscles. It has evolved a remarkable way of dealing with this problem. A special mesh of blood vessels in its arms acts as a heat exchanger. It keeps the muscles cooler than the rest of its body, reducing their need for oxygen. These slow-motion hunters have even evolved night vision goggles. They have a reflective layer at the back of their eyes. Any incoming light that passes through the retina undetected bounces off this reflective layer back towards the retina. This intensifies the brightness. Lorises came to India at least 8 million years ago. Like many creatures, they didn't stop in the Ghats. They followed the monsoon forests all the way to Sri Lanka, now cut off from India by the narrow Palk Strait. Many familiar Indian animals live on both sides of the strait. In addition to lorises, herds of wild elephants could only have reached Sri Lanka by walking across a land bridge that has since disappeared. Isolated by rising sea levels, the Sri Lankan loris has become a unique new species. It still feeds primarily on insects, sneaking up on them with smooth, fluid movements. Their front and hind legs are the same length. They have more vertebrae in their spines than other primates, making them more flexible. These adaptations allow them to hold seemingly impossible positions. Curiously, Sri Lankan lorises take a much wider range of foods, including small animals. As a result, they have a lot more energy than their Indian cousins do. They are the fastest members of a slow family. Lorises share the night with one of the largest bats in the world, the Indian flying fox. When day breaks, they roost in trees rather than caves. They are so unlike other bats, many scientists consider them to be flying primates, until DNA studies showed they are indeed bats. Strange, mutant bats. They cannot echolocate by sonar. We don't know if they have lost the ability or never evolved it in the first place. But they do have excellent night vision. At dusk, they set off in search of fruit, which they find by smell instead of sonar. Their large size may be the reason they don't have sonar. Flying bats breathe at the same rate as they flap their wings. Each breath, they produce a sonar beep. Because these large fruit bats beat their massive wings so slowly, any sonar beeps they made would be of too low a frequency to be useful for echolocation. When day breaks, fast-moving monkeys take over the forest. These are macaques. Sweet, high-calorie fruit is a major part of their diet. This must be the ultimate sugar rush. Macaques are the most widespread family of primates. Only humans have colonized a wider range of environments. Macaques spread out of Africa about 5 million years ago. At that time, forests covered much of India. That allowed macaques to continue east all the way to Japan and south to Sri Lanka. These are toque macaques, the only species of macaque living in Sri Lanka. They are supreme opportunists. Extendable cheek pouches are a handy adaptation that allows them to store surplus food for later. These versatile monkeys have adapted to live in every kind of habitat on the island. Across the sea in the Western Ghats lives a similarly versatile macaque. Bonnet macaques, named for their hairstyle, are equally at home in the wet jungles and in drier, more open areas. They share the Ghats with lion-tailed macaques, the rarest member of the family. Curiously, their closest relatives are pig-tailed macaques, living in far-off Southeast Asia, not the bonnet macaques that share their home. They live in troops of up to 30 animals, usually with one dominant male. It's likely all these youngsters have the same father. The forest sustains these macaques, and they in turn sustain it. As they move around in search of food, they spread the seeds of fruit they've eaten. They are one of the most important seed dispersers in the Ghats, together with the hornbill. At the nesting site, the female hornbill has come out of her confinement. Her casque is slightly smaller than the male's and tinged with red instead of black. There is no longer room for both mother and chick inside the nest. The chick has sealed the slit back up after she left. So how does it communicate with its parents, both now outside the nest? The hornbill's beautiful but unusual eyelashes may have evolved for just that reason. They accentuate the eye, much like mascara in humans. Eyes are almost the only thing the birds can see of each other through the narrow slit. One theory is that they could be an important means of communication. The eyelashes also enhance the color around the eyes, and that may even give the parents information about the chick's nutritional needs. Its parents transfer piece after piece of meat and fruit. They toss their heads to position the morsels at the end of their beaks. Evolution has given them one more adaptation to help with these precision maneuvers. Hornbills are rare among birds in being able to see the tips of their beaks. They can see exactly what they're doing. For the next 2 weeks, feeding the chick will be a full-time job for both parents. While hornbills and lion-tailed macaques are constantly rebuilding the forest, there are seed predators which undermine their work. The giant Indian squirrel doesn't swallow seeds whole, it nibbles them to pieces. The jackfruit is a favorite of both squirrels and macaques. That can lead to trouble. They both want one particularly well-ripened jackfruit. The squirrel needs to be cautious. Macaques will kill and eat squirrels. The squirrel weighs almost as much as a small female macaque. However, this is the dominant male. He has a massive weight advantage. In the end, the squirrel wisely retreats. A large jackfruit can weigh nearly 50 kilos, 5 times as much as a large macaque. Sometimes it's easier to eat them on the ground. The jackfruit has a tough outer skin, but the lion-tail's sharp teeth are well adapted to deal with it. In fact, they are now so well adapted to life in the Ghats that they can't survive outside the monsoon forest. Yet strangely, the lion-tail's closest relatives live in forests thousands of kilometers away. How could that be? Around 2 million years ago, the jungles that connected forest macaques across India and Southeast Asia began to shrink, trapping one population in the Ghats. Isolated in their forest refuge, they evolved into lion-tails, a unique new species. What happened to cause the forest to disappear from central India? Over the last 2.5 million years, great ice sheets have repeatedly ravaged the northern hemisphere. Cooler global temperatures weakened the monsoon. India's interior dried out. Deserts and grasslands replaced the forests. The Western Ghats intercepted what rain there was and remained as a forest refuge for lion-tailed macaques and other creatures. As the Ice Age wreaked havoc with India's climate, a large new predator arrived that would make the most of the drier weather. It's a bear, but a very curious one. The Indian sloth bear. When European naturalists first saw it in the 1700s, they thought it was a member of the sloth family due to its shaggy coat and long curved claws. Those claws are useful for climbing trees, which the bears occasionally do to reach fruit and seeds. The shaggy fur is not as hot as it looks. Sloth bears have no insulating underfur, an adaptation to the tropical heat. Instead, the coat may have evolved as a defense against bites from their favorite prey, termites. These bears are searching for them under the rocks. They have some other unusual habits for bears. The attentive mothers carry their cubs on their backs. This is probably to keep them safe from predators rather than from termite bites. For Junior is eager to get off when his mother finds a termite nest. Sloth bears represent the most ancient lineage of living bears. Their relatives are sun bears and the American black bear. The sloth bear morphed into something quite unlike its cousins. It has evolved a narrow snout designed for sucking. As a cub, it loses its front teeth, allowing it to noisily suck up termites through the gap. While the Ice Age climate was good for the evolving sloth bears, it was a mixed blessing for the big cats. India is home to more kinds of big cats than anywhere else on Earth. As well as tigers, there are lions and leopards. Together with jaguars, they make up the family of roaring cats, or Panthera. The latest DNA and fossil discoveries suggest that big cats are all descended from a proto-cat called Pseudailuris. It looked similar to a small puma. It hunted small prey in what is now southern China. Then, around 11.5 million years ago, Pseudailuris dispersed into new environments. Evolutionary pressures changed the proto-cat into the range of big cats we know today. From their Asian origins, the big cats radiated out across the globe. Tigers and snow leopards split off 3.5 million years ago and headed for the Tibetan Plateau. Around 2 million years ago, early lions and leopards migrated towards Africa. At about the same time, ancestral jaguars and lions crossed a land bridge into North America. In prehistoric times, the lion's range also included most of Europe and the Middle East. These are Asiatic lions, which survive in just one protected part of India, the dry northern forests of Gir. They're more adapted to dry and open environments than tigers because they live in a pride. That allows them to take larger prey in open terrain where an ambush by a single big cat would be impossible. Leopards, though, are the most adaptable of the big cats. They're at home in the wet forests of the Western Ghats. They often drag their kills into a tree to hide them from the bigger cats, which are not good climbers. Unlike tigers, they are equally at home in the arid terrain that dominates this land. Their legendary stealth and a willingness to eat anything bigger than a dung beetle makes the leopard the most successful and widespread of the big cats. They have even colonized Sri Lanka. What has long puzzled scientists is that they seem to be the only big cat to have done so. A barely submerged chain of islands, known as Adam's Bridge, almost links India and Sri Lanka. It would only take a 10-meter drop in sea level to complete the bridge. Great ice sheets locked up so much water during the Ice Age that the sea level was up to 120 meters lower than today. At times, the bridge was 80 kilometers wide. There's no doubt that many creatures crossed this bridge in both directions for thousands of years. The question is, why did tigers colonize the Ghats, but never follow their prey into Sri Lanka? The conventional explanation is that they arrived in India too late to cross the bridge, which finally submerged about 12,000 years ago. Curious fossils discovered by Sri Lankan archaeologists suggest a startling new theory. They were the remains of creatures long extinct in Sri Lanka, including the teeth and bones of tigers. It was the first concrete evidence of tigers in Sri Lanka. As they continue to excavate, the scientists are starting to fill in more detail.
We found a few more fossils of the tiger, which have been dated to around 15,000 years ago, radiocarbon dated.
The Sri Lankan scientists think that these discoveries completely change our understanding of the tiger's history, not just in Sri Lanka, but India as well. Scientists already knew that tigers established themselves in the rainforests of Southeast Asia over 1 million years ago. From there, they spread to northeast India, which is still a tiger stronghold today. Although the terrain here is a little drier, it gets enough monsoon rainfall to sustain water holes. However, tigers may have been stalking deer in these forests for much longer than 12,000 years. Sri Lankan scientists speculate tigers expanded their range at least 70,000 years ago. Mountain ranges that cut across India could have remained sufficiently forested to provide a path from the north and east to the Ghats. Once there, they simply followed the long green corridor all the way to Sri Lanka, thousands of years before the bridge closed.
We really don't know when the tiger became extinct, although our current date is around 15,000 years ago. It might have survived into very much more recent times and might have been hunted out, killed off by humans.
The leopard is the great survivor, the only big cat left in Sri Lanka to this day. It has proved to be the most resilient to the dramatic changes to Sri Lanka's climate and to sharing its island home with humans. For the tiger, the Ghats are now a refuge. An ideal habitat that offers trees for cover, plenty of prey, and the life-giving waters of the monsoon. By the time storm clouds gather in June, the purple frog's tadpoles are big enough to start the next phase of their lives. The floodwaters wash them out of their sheltered birth pools and into the main channels. Another generation of tadpoles seeks out the safety of a waterfall on which to graze and grow. The hornbill chick breaks free from its prison in time to greet a wet world full of promise. Both parents watch anxiously from a nearby perch. as the chick, now almost as big as they are, takes its first good look at the outside world. It must leave the nest. But there's a 30-meter drop to the forest floor, and it has never flown before. It's a steep learning curve, but the dazed chick needs to get off the ground where it's vulnerable to predators. The distinctive casque hasn't yet developed. That'll take 5 years and may signal the onset of sexual maturity. Within minutes of its disastrous first attempt, the huge chick is able to fly. The parents swoop in to encourage and feed the confused infant. They'll look after it until it is 15 weeks old, ensuring their genes survive in the next generation. The Western Ghats are a refuge for the hornbill and many other animals whose lives are intimately tied to the monsoon rains. They are a sanctuary for evolutionary relics from Gondwana. For more recent immigrants, taking advantage of new routes opened up by continental drift. And a staging point for the tiger's push into southern India and Sri Lanka. Millions of years of mutation have adapted them to survive and thrive in the Ghats. The monsoon forest, with its abundant fruits, habitat, and respite from India's arid interior, is home to hundreds of unique species, found nowhere else on Earth.